Hey everyone, this is Teresa from Base 10 Montessori, and today we are going to do some lessons on the bells. For those of you who are new to my channel, I always try to put time codes in the description box below the video, so feel free to use those to help you navigate through the video, and as always, skip any part of the video you aren't interested in. If this is your first introduction to the Montessori bells, I have already made a few videos on the bells, and you can find them on my playlist, and let me show you where those playlists are at. So if you're right here on my YouTube channel, go over to playlists and you're going to see bell lessons, and then you can click on view playlist. I will make sure to also put a link down in the comment section for you, so I'll try to make that convenient for you by placing a link down below in the comment section. The first lesson video in this series was all about establishing the proper behavior you want to see with your students when they are using the bells. And that's what this first lesson is all about right here. After that, we start getting into more complicated lessons, but we always establish a behavior of respect with the materials in the Montessori environment before we work through all the lessons. So today's video will be on the lessons for matching games, memory games, and language lessons. After that, I will make one more video for the bells demonstrating the variations of grading exercises for the bells. Now, as I stated, I have this playlist in YouTube. However, if you're following me on Rumble, they don't have playlists yet. So unfortunately, there isn't a great way for me to organize my videos on Rumble yet. For the time being, you're going to be stuck with my YouTube playlists until Rumble can do some updates. Also, be sure to check out the link to the lesson manual for the bells that I have posted on my locals page. I have posted this for free in my locals community, and this community is free, but you do need to create an account to access my free content that I post. I have all sorts of free resources over on locals, so be sure to sign up and check out the free content that I post. I will also upload the PowerPoint slides from today's videos onto locals as well if you would like them. And all the links to the resources will be available in my comment section below, but if you don't see them, please leave me a comment. Sometimes YouTube deletes my own comments on my own videos. So occasionally I do need to repost my own comments. On YouTube, I have a section where I also make posts, and that's also where I will post links to access materials and resources. And as you can see right here, this is a little screenshot of what it looks like. And so this is the lesson manual that you can follow along with when we go over all of these lessons. Now, for those of you who are new, the traditional Montessori bells look like this. And I wish that I could show you that today, but I can't afford the Montessori bells. So in an effort to find more affordable materials, I will be using a different set of bells. Today, I'm going to be using the rhythm handbells that I bought from Amazon, and they're about $70 for the set. They will look and function a bit differently, as I have explained in my previous videos, but I really wanted to use materials not only that I could afford, but that probably other people could afford as well. A lot of people don't use the Montessori bells because they're so expensive and they are afraid to use them, or they can't afford to buy them. So let's talk about today's lesson real quickly before we jump into the presentation. First of all, today's lesson is all about matching, memory games, and language lessons. For the memory and language lessons, I'm simply going to go over them with PowerPoint slides because they are simple enough that between this video and the lesson manual that I'm posting here on Locals, I think you can understand them without a demonstration. For the demonstration part of today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the bells to do matching games that start very simple and grow in complexity. Keep in mind that the lessons on the bells are found in the sensorial area of the AMI Montessori album, and that the purpose is to refine the auditory sense. Eventually, that will lead to playing music, but that is not where we start in the Montessori classroom, especially in the 3 to 6 age group. We start simply with the refinement of the senses, and we do that through a method called isolation of difficulty, or one difficulty at a time. So we start out very simply, but by the time we are finished, we will have some lessons that are challenging even for adults. One important thing to note is that the sensorial area has specific memory games to work through. So memory game number 1 is called Matching at a Distance, and you're going to use this game throughout a variety of lessons and materials in the sensorial area. For the bells, there are 3 different variations of this lesson. The first variation is called Matching at a Distance. The second variation is called Hello. You're still matching at a distance with this lesson. However, in between matching the bell to the correct pitch, you have to stop and say hello to somebody. And then the third variation is having a conversation. So you'll match at a distance, you'll strike the first bell, and then you'll have a conversation with somebody, and then you'll go over to the other set of bells, the control bells, try to find the match after having a conversation with somebody. So it gets more difficult as it goes along. Memory game 2 is called Comparatives and Superlatives, and you're going to find this through a ton of different lessons in the sensorial album. For the bells, we're going to talk about language. Now, when it comes to language for the bells, we're going to introduce all the language in the language lessons, which I will show you on the next screen. But when it comes to comparatives and superlatives, we are simply going to be using the terms higher and lower or highest and lowest. When the child gets older, you can introduce the language of sharps and flats. Language for the bells is introduced with a 3-period lesson, and those lessons are explained in the lesson manual over on my locals page. The third memory game in the sensorial area is called Matching to the Environment. Now for the bells, this is not a lesson that we do. We don't try to match pitch to any other materials in the environment. However, I do have to show you something that might be a little bit confusing because of how I put together my lesson manual. So memory game 3 in the lesson manual is actually memory game 4 if you are classifying it by the type of memory game it is instead of in the order of lessons in the lesson manual. Memory game 4 in the sensorial album is large group lessons. And this doesn't happen very often in the Montessori classroom, but this does happen occasionally. And in fact, another material that uses memory game 4 would be the pink tower. When it comes to memory game 4, there is one for the bell lessons, and it is a large group game. So in this, we have one set of students each holding a control bell, and then there's a second set of students each holding the manipulative set of the bells, and then 1 or 2 students strike the bells and help place each child in order. Once again, in the manual, this lesson is labeled as the third memory game because that is the order of the lessons for the memory games in the bell lessons. However, just remember, when it comes to the type of memory game that it is, it's actually memory game 4. That might not make sense to most people out there. I'm only stating that because if there are some AMI students who are watching this and they're getting ready for exams, they're going through training, they're going to know that memory game 4 is large group and not matching to the environment. Now let's talk about language lessons for the bells because I'm not going to go through these as a demonstration. We're just going to talk through these and I'll let you use the manual to work through the lessons specifically. Some of the language we've already discussed for the bells. We've discussed high and low, so we're going to have a 3-period lesson on that. And then, of course, like I said before, this will lead to memory game 2, which is comparatives and superlatives. It will also lead into the language for sharps and flats. And again, we don't introduce this until later lessons when the child can begin reading music. There are also language lessons in the manual for giving the names of notes, up and down the scale, and of course we talk about a chromatic scale versus a diatonic scale. The lesson for the chromatic scale is available in my lesson manual. However, I only have the diatonic bells, so I can't demonstrate the chromatic lesson. You're just going to have to download the manual and read through that one. I just want to mention a quick note here, and this is mainly for people who are going through training. The lessons on reading and writing music for my album is in the extension section of my AMI language album. It's not in the sensorial album, so I'm not going to be covering that in this video series for the bells. Now let's switch over to my other camera, and first I'm going to demonstrate that I did buy some mallets for my handbells, so I'm using them a little bit differently in this video and they're a little awkward, so we're going to talk through that first, and then I'm going to give you that demonstration on matching the bells. Okay, so here we are with my 2 sets of bells. Now, if you are following along in the lesson manual that I've posted on Locals, we're going to do the matching game. But before we do that, I want to show you the mallets that I bought from Target. So this is a mallet I bought from Target. I bought 2 of them for $5. They're not bad. However, one thing I didn't think about when I ordered them is that this is much longer than the mallet we use for the Montessori bells. So as you can see, it's a bit awkward to hold it when it's this long. So if I'm going to use it eventually, I am going to cut it down to a shorter length. But for today, I'm going to do the best that I can because I haven't had a chance to cut it down yet, and I really want to show you this lesson. So we are going to use it the way it is, and I am going to do my best to use that pincer grip. Now, the nice thing about using this mallet instead of ringing the handbell like I showed you in previous videos is that it's softer. So for example, this is how it would sound. And this is how it would sound if I used it like a handbell. So this does make it a much quieter work, so that's kind of nice. And some of you might prefer that. However, it is a little bit awkward to hold this and strike at the same time. So there are still some adjustments I need to make if I'm going to use a mallet, but we're going to do our best today. Now let's start with the matching game. But before we can actually play the game, we have to do a bell check. So once we check our bells to see if they're in the right order, we can start our game. And to start our game, we're just going to take our first 3 bells and set them to the side. And once we do that, we're going to let our student know that we're going to mix up the bells so they're out of order. All right, so I've mixed up the bells, they're out of order, and now it's time to check. This is the bell we're going to check first, and we're going to see if it matches the very first control bell in the control set. That doesn't match. So if it doesn't match, we're going to put it to the end of our line and start the next one. Let's see if this one matches. So that one goes right there because it matches. Let's try this one next. That matches. That's a match. And that is how we do our first matching lesson. Now we start with the 3 bells, but if they are really struggling with these first 3 bells, then take out every other bell or make it a greater difference, right? If the first 3 bells, they can't hear the difference between them, make the difference greater. So once they do the first 3 bells, if they're still interested, they can do the next 3 bells and then the last 3 bells. So once doing 3 bells at a time gets too easy, go ahead and switch to 4 and make your way up to doing all the bells. And that is how you do the matching lessons. That's pretty simple. Now, just to quickly go over the memory games, remember the first memory game is going to be matching at a distance. So you're going to leave your control bells where they are, and you're going to take your blue set of bells, and you can start with just the first 3, right? We don't have to do all of them at once. Start with just the first 3 and take them to a different place in the classroom or in your home environment. So the first 3 bells go to a table in a different room or across the room, and one at a time, you're going to mix them up, and one at a time, you're going to ring the bell and do the same thing. You're matching, you're still matching, but this time you've separated them at a distance, and then it gets more difficult. Right? They're going to ring the bell at one table, they're going to stop, they're going to say a word like hello to somebody, and then they're going to go to the control table and see if they can find the matching bell. And then the third variation is to have a conversation. If you're in the home environment, they can have this conversation with a pet, even a goldfish, maybe a chicken, and then they're going to continue on and see if they can find the match. So you're matching at a distance with no interruptions, and then you're matching at a distance with 1 interruption, and then you're matching at a distance with a longer interruption. So that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like this video, like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.